So there was a lot of like saying yes when I wanted to say no. There was a lot of theatrics and acting, right? And so I remember I was about 26. I'm 53 now, so I was about 26, and I was in a relationship that was just, I mean, it was like, so it was a great movie, a horrible life.
Hmm.
There was like the throwing of the dishes and holding onto someone's leg as they're walking away, dragging me across the room, and how dare you do this to me? And then the like passionate making up kind of thing. And it just seems so glamorous. And it was like I ended up on antidepressants. I remember I lost so much weight, but it was like awesome because I was so thin, but really it's because I was just being eaten up inside. My nervous system was so jacked up.
Welcome to the Deeper Awareness Podcast, where we delve into the depths of our inner selves, uncovering authenticity and transformation. Join us for enlightening conversations on breathwork, self-discovery, and the profound journey within. I'm your host, Josh Perry, joined by the delightful Hannah Oxley. Let's begin.
Hello and welcome to today's episode of the Deeper Awareness Podcast. I'm Hannah, and today Josh and I are joined by the lovely Shannon Bryson. A topic that often comes up for our show is the balance of masculine and feminine energy that lives within each of us. And I loved talking about this with Shannon because she focuses on helping women find their feminine energy. Because as we live in a more masculine world of trying to get things done and trying to prove our worth to everybody, we often lose touch of that feminine creativity, that the messiness that we need to be allowing into our everyday life. There's no more room for perfectionism, I like to say. So one aspect that Shannon brings up in the episode today is playing. Sometimes you get that little jolt of like play, like I'm too old to play, whatever that means. Like it's a little bit of an uneasy feeling, because we're so far away from that stage of life where play felt so natural. So we talk a lot about that in today's episode. So that's my invitation for you today. Once you listen to this episode, is maybe just do something that reminds you of that inner child, of whatever it is. Like, was it trucks and like bulldozers or Barbies, which a lot of people are feeling that nostalgia of, like, all of these women used to play with Barbies, and men too, or anything. Like I used to love pretending I was a dog when I was a kid, so I love to play with my dog, like get on all fours and like wrestle with my dog. Like that just brings me back to my childhood. So that's my invitation today for you, is to play just a little. Just give yourself a little taste of fun and that enjoyment that we used to feel when we were younger, because that's the feminine, that's the creativity that we are so lacking. So without further ado, here is Shannon and her beautiful story. Enjoy.
So, welcome to today's episode. We're so happy to have Shannon here with us. Shannon and I were in the same pause program, learning breathwork, and I feel like I don't actually remember you in the program other than practicum when I was signing up for your things. And so I remember Shannon tried to get me to play in one of our sessions together, and I was like, this is so uncomfortable. I don't know how to do this. And she's like, come on, let's play. So that's really really meaningful. That was a big part of, my introspection and growth. So, Shannon, we're just going to give you a little bit of time here to introduce yourself, what you're kind of, who you are today, and then we'll dive into the meat of the podcast.
Okay. Well, thank you. Thanks for having me on. I'm super excited and honored to be here. So again, my name is Shannon. I'm in San Diego, California, and at the moment in my life, I have a business called Wild Breath, where I do, of course, facilitate breath work, mostly online, but I also run retreats all over the world, which has been a dream come true. It started with the fact that I wanted to travel, and then it's just worked into taking a bunch of women is what I work with. At the moment, I work with only women. I work with women who are going through transitions in life, whether it's menopause or empty nester or divorces, or it's women who are like changing seasons in life and moving into something else, and not 100% certain what that looks like for them or who they are now, as opposed to who they were last time they got an opportunity to take a look at their situation. So giving them tools, breathwork being the main one, but I do work with some other modalities as well. Giving them tools to kind of just get quiet and to listen to their own intuition. And so I don't have a cookie cutter program to where I say, this is what you need to do to figure it out. I give them lots of tools to play with, because playing is huge for me. Because it's just, we take this self-awareness journey or spirituality or, going within, we just take it so seriously. And it's not that it's not serious, but also part of the human experience is also to like have fun and play and be spontaneous and creative. And so I want to remind people to do that part of it. And I'm really, as of late, diving into this balancing of the masculine and feminine. Like, as I have gone through my healing journey, like things pop up with me. I'm like, oh, wow, that was big for me. It must be going on for other people as well. But really diving into this, and it's not a male female thing. It's this masculine and feminine energy thing that we're just a whole world of doing and structure and analyzing and checking off all the boxes on the checklist. And there's that. And then there's this other side of going like all the way, like being introspective all the time and dancing naked in the forest and howling at the moon. And that's beautiful also, but I can't live there either, So really supporting women at the moment, women in finding their balance with that, because it's so jarring on our nervous systems being our masculine on all the time, and we can't get anything done being in our feminine all of the time. So supporting women and finding their unique balance, like they don't have to be 50-50. Like someone might just be innately more masculine or innately more feminine, whether they're male or female. And so giving them tools to play again to find their balance.
Ooh, there's so much there. That's so good.
It's so beautiful.
Yeah. So other than that, I have 2 kids that I love so much, and they're like these little, like a little witch and a little warlock. I'm so grateful for them because we've kind of grown up together. And and I just want to, I guess put a little plug in for them because they're just amazing, such important souls in my life.
That's so good. So we love to hear, so the premise of deeper awareness is this idea that we're kind of taught or shown what will fulfill us. And we go through the motions, we're going after it. And then at some point, something happens and it's just like, this isn't working. Something has to change.
Yeah.
So if you could, we'd love to hear your version of that.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, the weird thing is like it's strange because sometimes I feel like a brat because when I say like, I mean, I really had a lovely home. I mean, I it's one of those things where it seems so great. And then once I grew up, I'm like, wow, that was really effed up. That was like, wow. But overall, it's like, the first question that was on the thing is like my personal journey. And I was thinking about that. I'm like, it was just interesting because I felt very loved. Like there was a lot of love in my home. I knew my parents loved me and I was close with my sisters, like all that. And there was a lot of confusion around that as well, because there was conditions to feeling loved. So it was like, as long as you were like pretty and smart and thin and pleasant and agreeable, then you felt lovable. And so it was like striving to be all these things all the time. And it was really interesting because my mom is beautiful and she was in show business, and they were kind of like the show Mad Men. That was like the era of my parents. And so my dad was like this big, like powerful business guy, very masculine, cocktails and mistresses. And, that was like totally almost glamorized in my house. And then my mom was like this beautiful, fiery Latin singer. And she was, in my eyes as a kid, like he was so masculine and she was so feminine, but it still wasn't like sitting with me that was feminine. And like when it finally hit me was like, she was totally masculine also. She was just using this like feminine costume over a very masculine way of being. So I learned that being feminine was being like really sexual and flirty, and it was more like using my feminine, like not even my feminine, using being female as a power over something. And I mean, I remember in second grade, it was my first day of Catholic school and I didn't have a uniform yet. And I remember what I wore to school was this little red, it was a red shirt, long sleeve, whatever, that said flirt with some lips on it. And I was like, I didn't even know what flirt meant. And I remember asking, and she's like, oh, it means like when you wink at somebody so you can get something you want. And so I was like, oh, okay. So, so when anybody asked me what flirt meant, I'm like, oh, it means when you wink at somebody. And I didn't really know what it meant, but I mean, it's just like encouraged to be like, I remember my dad saying, you are beautiful and you are smart. And that's a dangerous what did I say? That's a dangerous combination. And you can get anything you want with that. And so it was always like this feminine female thing was more like a power that I had, which I liked that. Yeah. But it was like always having to live up to something. We were always, it was always like doing and making sure. I ended up having an eating disorder growing up, and because it's like I had to be thin enough and it had to be this enough, and I always got good grades and I got into college, and where I was saying the confusion with the family was that my dad like was very like super loving, also a very, very high functioning alcoholic. And we didn't know, there was this combination of like, I know he loves me, but I better be all the things to make sure because I didn't know what mood he was going to be in that day, depending on, what mood he decided that day. It was a very much like a walking on eggshell thing. So I would start conversations with him like, hey, I had a test today and I got an A, or like, oh, look, I got a new dress. Mom bought me a dress. And like, it was always like about like doing something to earn it first so that I could like soften him up so that he would love me. Yeah. And in doing that, totally like squished this like softer voice of just being like intuitive and open and just being and slowing down. It was always like I was on a I was always analytical with what I had to do and what path I had to be on to get what I needed. But because I was a girl and doing it in a girly way, that was feminine, when now I know that was just totally masculine and it was a power play, So something always felt a little off with that, and I didn't know what it at the time, but my nervous system was just jacked up because I was totally avoiding that part of me, like this softer, quiet part of me, and it was too quiet to hear. Like everything else was so fucking loud. Yeah. And at the same time, I felt very loved. And at the same time, my parents were super playful. And so we had a lot of play and laughter in my house. And so yeah, I'm just gonna say like overall, and that's not, I'm sure it's not like a totally unique story. Maybe the details might be, but like overall, it's like it's just a confusing household. And so and then on top of that, actually, there was a lot of financial stuff where we had everything. We were part of the country club and Rolls Royces and private school, and my parents would go to balls, and it was like major like that. And then like our house would be, we would have to move out of our house, foreclosed, and cars would be repossessed, and we had to move, and we lived at like a totally different kind of life in a little shack in the country. And as kids, my sisters and I didn't know the difference. We were just moving, never lived anywhere more than 4 years my entire life. And so we just always, wow, I'm having kind of an aha with this right now. Like we always got plopped somewhere new, got to recreate who we were. And I had to make sure to be on the A list, to make friends with popular people and be what I needed to be to fit in. Oof. Yeah. So that was like a full-time job, right? Yeah.
You're never in that rest and digest.
No, never. It's just always like, okay, who would I be? Who is that? How do I fit in? How do I get into the cave so I can be in that clan so that the dinosaurs don't get me if I don't get in, It's just constantly in this survival mode, really.
It's that same approach taking with your dad. Like how can I soften these people
100%.
so then they will accept me for
100%.
who I am.
Yeah.
Who I'm trying to be.
Right. So in all these formative years, it's like I never really got to figure out, there were bits of who I felt I was, but it's funny because when I remember as a kid, there was like 4 Halloweens in a row where I was a fortune teller. And I was like, I want to grow up and be a gypsy and be a fortune teller. And I want to, read people's palms. And I'm like, yeah, that honestly, thinking back, that's pretty much what I wanted to do. It's kind of what I do now. So there was a little bit of me that knew I wanted this, like, and if I was to like really hone that into like, what is that really? It's like, I knew there was a part of me that wanted to be connected to my intuitive side and to connect with others with that. And, but that just, I remember when I wanted to go to school to do hair and my dad was like, yeah, my daughter's not doing hair. Like my dad was big and financial. And then he also taught at UCLA. He taught business at UCLA. So he's like, yeah, you're not going to cosmetology school. Like that's not an option, So I went to 1 year of college and just threw away a year and his money. And at the end of that year, I'm like, I want to go to cosmetology school. And so I did. And then I did hair for 33 years. I did hair. And my parents ended up creating or buying a spa or opening a spa, and the whole family was in the business, which is kind of funny. But yeah. Anyway, so for years I just was so busy trying to fit in that and it wasn't just fit in, it was like fit in and be like in the top tier of fitting in, because that would make me lovable. So of course taking that into like starting to have relationships, like romantic relationships, and it's like when people look at like I've been married a couple times, and even boyfriends relationships I've had, Like they're all completely different. And I was completely different with each one, because I would meet someone and there'd be aspects of them that I'm like, oh, I love that. And then I'm like, okay, who do I need to be for them to love me? Like when it comes to manifesting things, I have no problem. I have no problem manifesting what I want. I just need to be more discerning about what I'm asking for. It's not just like, oh, I want this, so I'm going after it and I'm going to get it. It's like, is this really for me? Is this for my highest good? Am I for their highest good? Like I'm going into this relationship thinking it's loving. This was what I was telling myself. It's loving of me to be whoever they need me to be. And I thought that was love. Like if they're, the desert rat guy who goes to the desert ride motorcycles, great. Now I learn how to ride a motorcycle and I have all the gear. If they're like sporty guy, okay, well now I go to all the football games and I dress like in Nike everything. It's like whatever I think is pleasing and agreeable to them and will make them love me most. Like, so I end up being like, and I say this with all humility, I've been proposed to so many times because I'm not really me. I'm being the perfect person I think they want me to be. Or this is how I was, right? And then so people are like, wow, you really don't have a type. You've been with so many different type of people. And it's like, it's the power play in me, not realizing that I'm doing that. I'm not doing it on purpose, thinking I'm being in this power position, but I'm doing it kind of like, oh, I know exactly what to do to get what I need, which was love. Which is, yeah. So that has been really a lifetime of that. And until, I don't know, like the last 10 years or so has been a real deep dive into like, wow, like in the middle of a relationship that I was doing that, like really going like, wow, I'm doing that. Like I see that that's what I've done. And I've kind of done it again. And then as I was like kind of, working on unraveling that and untangling that, watching my life fall apart. So let's see. I feel like I've had a few aha moments. I'm sure we all have a few aha moments. It's just that it might have taken several before I really listened and did anything about it.
There always whispers first.
Yeah, exactly. So, talked about being this agreeable, extra power, like femme fatale type of thing, and there was a point where I really started noticing how it was such a disservice to my nervous system, always being basically a people pleaser, but it was in a when I think of a people pleaser, just being agreeable, just being, I think of like nice little housewife who's make sure that the right dinner. That wasn't my story at all. It was more like being very it was I don't know what the word would be. I was definitely more fiery than that, but it was still it was really, honestly, if I'm honest, it was just using like my sexuality as a power. And when I started really noticing, I was kind of doing it innately, and then just started noticing like, wow, that's ugly. And it's a disservice to femininity, and it was jarring to my nervous system. So there was a lot of like saying yes when I wanted to say no. There was a lot of theatrics and acting. Right. And so I remember I was about 26. I'm 53 now. So I was about 26 and I was in a relationship that was just, it was like, so it was a great movie, a horrible life. There was like the throwing of the dishes and holding onto someone's leg as they're walking away, dragging me across the room. And how dare you do this to me? And then the like passionate making up kind of thing. And it just seems so glamorous. And it was like, I ended up on antidepressants I remember I lost so much weight, but it was like awesome because I was so thin, but really it's because I was just being eaten up inside. Like my nervous system was so jacked up. Anyway, long story short, that ended, but I had never been single since I was about 13 for more than 3 months. And, even if when I was younger, it was just like these cute little boyfriend relationships. But I've just never not been within a relationship most of my life that it was like that. And so again, I kept seeing that I was doing it. And when I had a woman, a therapist that I had gone to off and on for years. And what she said about me, and I think when she said this to me, maybe about 6 years ago, it really hit home for me. She's like, you do the opposite of what most people do. She's like, most people go in like all them, totally show up as themselves, and little by little, they lose themselves in a relationship. She's like, you go in totally not yourself, whatever you think you need to be. And then throughout the relationship, you start waking up and you get to a point where you're like, I can't do this. This isn't me. So I don't know if one's better or worse, but the point is, in these relationships, I finally get to a point where I'm like, okay, I really do genuinely like this about the person, but it doesn't need to be me. Or there's this part of me that I'm like now not allowed to show or be. And the person I'm with is like, who are you? You've changed. And I'm like, actually, I've always been this. And I realized that in thinking I was being loving by showing up how they might want me to be, I was not being loving at all because they were not really getting to truly, like, I was doing everyone a disservice by like them not really knowing who I was. They couldn't really love me, right? And then I'm mad at them for not fully loving me. I'm upset or feel rejected or abandoned because I'm not loved for me when I really never showed them me.
So, yeah, question here.
Yeah.
I very much relate to what you're saying. And the Runaway Bride, you remember that?
Yeah.
Movie? And where she didn't know what kind of eggs she liked.
Right. 100% exactly that.
And so did it seem like you knew what kind of eggs you liked and you were choosing their eggs, or did you have no idea?
I think I was just curious what their eggs tasted like. And then I'm like, oh yeah, that's interesting. I'd like to try that. I'm interested in that. And then all I was doing was eating their eggs. And one day I'm like, fuck you. I want my egg. When they're like, what happened? I'm like, and I'm like throwing down this big devastation that they don't know me or get me, or when it was me who was not letting them in, which was also terrifying. Because what if they don't love me? What if like I'm not skinny enough, pretty enough, smart enough, blah, blah enough, or nice enough, or whatever. And then I'm not lovable. That's terrifying. Like that would be the end of the world if I wasn't lovable. It brings tears to my eyes just thinking about that. So make a long story short, finally I was in a relationship, which I will say was the love of my life, the most difficult relationship I've ever been in, and the most growth that I've had ever. And it was because it was so hard. And there was so much, it was probably really replicating my relationship with my dad in the sense of there was so much love there. There still is. We're friends and we're like, but there's so much love there. And it's so dysfunctional. Like, it's just so, like, we're not meant to be together and we love each other so much. And so, there was a lot of things that went on in that relationship and there was lots of years in it of being able to go back and forth and him allowing me to be me, and both of us having lots of wounds from childhood that we lashed out at each other because of, and allowed each other to work through, and lots of breakups and getting back together. It was just a big, long, it was like the longest therapy session ever.
So
however,
real quick,
yeah.
At what point, like in your journey, did you discover that it was like childhood stuff, or that it was wounding, or that it was patterns that you could actually notice, discover, unearth, and do something about?
Yeah. So I think with somewhere along the way in that relationship, I realized that like this wasn't a new feeling I was having. So it's like, when have I felt this loved and this not loved at the same time? It's like, and so when I started, because during one of our breakups, I really started, I'd gone to Peru. Well, actually it was before that. During that relationship anyway, I just started doing a lot of work, and between reading the books and doing like some ceremonies and just spending some quiet time, because we were together, but we both were very independent, even though we were together. And in that quietness, starting to ask myself, like, why does this, it's so hard and I don't leave. Like, why does this feel comfortable? Like, what about this is making me stay? And what about this feels so comfortable and almost soothing to me, even though it was so hard? And I started realizing it felt just like my relationship with my dad. It was like, oh, is he going to love me today? Am I going to be the good girl today? Or am I, and then when I'm not the good girl, it's like, what do I do to get back to being the good girl? And then there's things that just happened that were not things that I would never be okay with, never allow, never. And there was something about the fact that we had been friends for years beforehand that gave us this other little platform to work with. It wasn't just the romantic. There was a friendship part that I was like, okay, he did, like, this happened. He did do this thing, but I can see where he's coming from because I know what his upbringing is. And so I was making a lot of excuses for things that were not okay. Because if I don't know. There was a lot of, again, this is when it all started, like when I was talking about how I started doing some of the diving in and my life started falling apart. Like my life started unraveling. I started like untangling things and being like, oh, wow, this one's connected to my childhood and this one's connected to my feelings of being unworthy. And oh, well, I've already been married a couple times. I mean, I don't deserve to have a real clean relationship. So this is like the best I can get now. Or, oh, well, he gets this aspect of me and he still likes me most of the time. It was just a lot of, I don't want to say settling because he's really lovely and I love him. It's not that I was settling for him, but I was settling for how much I thought I could have in a relationship. Like of how healthy or how happy of a relationship am I allowed to have with my past, type of thing. But there was like all of that I've said leads to this big drum roll of like the moment. So there was some like infidelities going on throughout the relationship with, like, he had a couple times cheated on me and caught him in lies several times. And there was always like talking his way out of it and me being whatever, a lot of that. And I just always knew that it wasn't okay. Like stuff was going on and I knew, and he kept saying it wasn't. And I wanted to believe him, but I had a feeling in my body that I just knew and I kept avoiding it. And I was just feeling I wasn't feeling great physically, not feeling great. And there was a day he came home, and it's like the day that literally changed my life. He came home and we lived out in the country, and he's a real, like, he would not go to Starbucks because that's like the man owns it and he would never like do, so he came home with a Starbucks cup. I'm like, you went to Starbucks? And he's like, yeah. Anyway, it was like this back and forth. Like, he's like, why did you keep asking me this? Why? And I just knew. I knew. I went and I pulled down the little, because I asked him, Mom, did you go by yourself? Did you? And he's like, why are you being so weird about a cup of coffee? I went and pulled off the sleeve, and his ex-girlfriend's name, the girl that he'd been messing with, her name was on the cup. And I just looked at that and I got this shock through my body. And I was like, I know when I know, and I will never forget the feeling of my body telling me that I know something.
Mm.
And that seems kind of a silly moment, but that moment I was like, that feeling of knowing was anchored in my body. And so that was just like, okay, never again. Like that voice is going to get louder in me. I'm not stuffing that voice down anymore. So, of course we broke up and,
So real quick,
yeah.
as you were sharing that, I could feel like this shiver running through me, like this truth. And as you were calling it silly, I was like, that is the most unsilly thing that we have access to.
Yeah.
And I like to ask this question because we all have ignored that feeling, or we don't trust it. For you, what do you think? You can share like your experience, and then why we as a society, what is it that has us ignoring that?
Well, first I want to say that I don't think the experience was silly. I just think that it's funny how it showed up in a cup of Starbucks coffee.
Yeah,
That
yeah,
felt silly.
yeah.
But the experience was super profound for me.
Mm.
And because I think for me specifically, obviously I can't speak for all of humanity, but for me, there's a responsibility you need to take when you're going to live in truth.
Mm.
And I don't think that before that point, I was ready. I was scared of that responsibility, because does that mean if I face the music, am I going to be alone? Like, what does it mean? I have a big story with finances too, with money, the energy around money. And so I was like, oh my gosh, I live with this person and a lot of things are taken care of. So if I'm going to be honest, like, and live in my truth where my nervous system feels soothed, and like, does that mean I'm going to be alone? Does that mean that, like, can I afford it? Am I going to be living? I believe that like every fear we have boils down to we're afraid we're going to die. So all of a sudden I'm like, oh my gosh, we're going to break up and I'm going to be alone. I'm going to be on the streets and then there's going to be a horrible winter and I'm going to die, you know? And so the avoidance of it is like, I need to now take responsibility for just being me. And I don't have, and do I trust myself to take care of me emotionally, like physically, tangibly? And when being honest, do I want to? Like, that just sounds exhausting to do it by myself, you know? But
Which it is.
it is, it can be, it is, you know, life is, I mean, you know, this whole human experience is like not for the faint of heart, for sure. And I think that's why I have to bring the play into it. It brings a balance in for me. And it is like life here now in this time is super masculine. It's just very masculine. And to survive again here and the way it is now, I feel like I have to be so in my masculine to survive. Right. And so taking responsibility for my nervous system and for my life, for that matter, really allowed me to be less masculine. Like, I was, by taking responsibility, I was afraid it was going to be harder. It's actually allowed me to let go a little more and trust a little more and be a little more creative and allow like flow and be like more receptive instead of always having to like be giving and doing and creating and structuring and making sure that like got to let go of some control. And now now it's like, oh my gosh, now it's like, yeah, I have to have the structure, right? I have to pay my bills. I have to do some things. I run a business, yeah. But I also have like so much more freedom in my body and my nervous system by just trusting in what's coming, what's for me. So I was like, why do people not do it? I don't know. For me, I think it was like afraid of taking responsibility for my life.
Mm.
And like I said, I had never been single. And even when I was single, not in a relationship, my kids were home. So then in the last like 5, 6 years, 7 years, I've stepped into this place where like I'm single. I have no kids at home and I have a lot of alone time. And by myself a lot. And at first that kind of scared me. Well, I'd say at first it sounded great. Like, oh my gosh, that sounds amazing. At first it sounded amazing. And then once that settled and it wasn't just like a vacation, then I was like, this is my life. Then it was very uncomfortable. Lots of tears, lots of like nervous system, like feeling frenetic a lot. And then I had to start, then breathwork came in.
How did you find it?
Gosh, I don't even know. I think it was actually after he and I had broken up. It was one of those things where like I heard about it like 3 separate times. 3 different people were telling, like I kept hearing about it. I'm like, okay, I'm gonna try it. So I found someone and I did a session online actually. And I will say I've never had a session like that first session. The first session I had was like mind blowing. Had my dad that passed away there with me. My body was convulsing. It was really profound for me. But what the most profound thing was the silence I felt in my body. I was like, oh wow. Like that's what that feels like. I don't think I've ever experienced it in my life. Ugh, that feeling of, and so that feeling, I started to trust that I needed more of that feeling, basically. So that was my first breathwork session. And and I am also that girl because I am so in my masculine. If I do something and I like it, I've got to take the course. I got to get certified and I want to go all the way with it. And so I started doing more sessions. And then I had my first breathwork certification in maybe 2020. And I was certified, but it was a very masculine teacher, a woman, but in a very it was all about like, just have them in, there was no talk about trauma informed. It was just about make them cry, get them to cry. And that like the breathwork portion felt amazing. And I got a lot of people to really release a lot, but something felt, it was missing that feminine aspect. I didn't know that's what it was at the time, but there was just something that felt not responsible about it for me. Yeah. So, but I kept playing around with it. And then when I found, pause, I was like, oh yeah, this is exactly, I actually taught a group of people and certified them to teach breathwork before I found pause. And then I called them all back. I'm like, I want to like almost apologize for not knowing what I didn't know. And let's do a little addendum here. And then after taking that course, I was like, yeah, I don't think I would ever teach breath work to certify people again because pause is so all inclusive. It has everything. I could never do more than that. Like that, it's such an amazing course that I really now I refer people to the course because it was so great. But yeah, that silence for me, and there's different modalities for different people. And I've done all the psychedelics. I was constantly searching for something. I didn't know what it was. And I loved that I found it without a substance, because I found it with substances, but I can't live in that land all the time either, or I don't want to. And so to find something that's within us, to be able to find that, that silence. And once I was able to hear that, and again, once I was able to understand that it was a different type of language, because I was listening for answers in a very practical, analytical kind of way. And even if something felt off, I would rationalize it or justify things. It was just like it was in like a masculine language. And then when I started realizing that, oh, there's this other language that I'm learning now. And now that I'm learning that language, the more I learn it, it's getting louder. And now, as a matter of fact, my ex and we got back together for a period of time. And because he's lovely and there's so much love there, we got back together, and then we just have a dynamic with each other that just, So we got to a point, I'm like, yeah, it's not working. And I started with it's not working because of A, B, and C, and then there's D and a little bit of E. And then I was like, nope. When we broke up, I said to him, because he's like, why? What now? What's the problem? I'm like, you know what? My nervous system can't do this relationship. And that's like all I needed. I didn't need the whole story around it, or a blaming thing, or you're bad and I'm good, or I feel guilty for breaking your heart, or, nothing like that. I was like, my nervous system, when we're together, my nervous system is so jacked up. Even if, as we're sitting down reading books together in a quiet space, my nervous system is like on edge. And when we're not together, I feel silent and quiet again. And that to me was like such a loud message that I might not have heard or understood the language my body was speaking to me before.
Well, we're taught to, I always find this funny that we're taught to like, oh, did you get butterflies from that person? It's like, that's actually your nervous system kind of telling you that something's off.
Something's off.
Like, find somebody that makes you feel relaxed and not nervous, not butterflies.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah. So now it's like, so we broke up and we had about 3 years, and I didn't date at all. I wasn't trusting enough that I was there. And I just really dove into my business and into my breath work. And it was really, really, really amazing to have 3 single years of no kids, no relationship, and just being with myself and building my relationships with my friends and
meeting yourself in that silent place.
Oh my gosh, absolutely. And actually, I fucking love myself. I really I'm so grateful. I feel like I'm back to that gypsy palm reader. I just feel like playful again and light again and like feel good and lovable just being myself. And it doesn't have to be, there's no agenda with my love. It's like, hey, here I am. And if you want to play with me, play with me. And if you don't, good, no worries. It doesn't mean anything about me or about you. I've now gone on a couple dates recently, actually, which is that's a whole other podcast, different podcast. But I've gone on a couple dates and I'm just super clear about what I want and I don't want. And it's not about how can I fit into their life, but like, does this human and my humanness, is it like complementary for what the feeling I would like in my body? And I had no problem. It didn't have to be a big, oh, I'm going to ghost this person, or, oh, they're bad. I was just, there was one particular person I said, yeah, I just think we have different lifestyles and, you're great. And I had a blast, actually. I totally had fun, but it's just not, no, thank you. And wow, having a response from someone that in the past would have just been so great for my ego. Like, I'll do this and I'll do that. Honestly, it was almost like me, like, I'll do this and be this kind of person. And I really want you in my life and blah, blah. And I was like, no, you don't need to change a thing. You're great. Like, it's just not, we're just not like, it's just a no in my body. That's all. That's freeing in itself. Yeah. So yeah.
Well, I think that's cool. The universe that you got to interact with that version of you that you used to be, and now you're here and you can see clearly where you were and where you are, and you're like,
yeah,
no, thank you. I love the no, thank you.
Yeah, I do too. It's interesting how it's received. I'm used to, again, the way I grew up in my household, a lot of drama. And in my relationships, they've always been like lots of drama. At some point or another, there's like, especially the endings. The endings are always so dramatic. And it's like, it's been really like I always wanted this and this, you know? And it's like been really amazing to feel this. Like even at an ending, it's like, and it doesn't have to, like all this meaning doesn't have to be attached to it. It's just keeping, I'm really working on like not creating any more entanglements in my life, just keeping everything like clean lines of no, this, or maybe not today, maybe not now, maybe at a later time, but not right now, or just being this totally honest. And before being honest, I was afraid it would hurt somebody or I'd lose somebody or I didn't want to hurt someone's feelings. And at the end of the day, like not being honest, it just draws out the hurt feelings for longer. And the way someone's going to react to truth is not really my responsibility. You know?
Well, that brings me to a question I wanted to ask you. Because like you had said too, when there's something I'm dealing with, I'm working on, it's probably someone else is working on it too. The word kept coming up, agreeable. And that's been like a word for me lately. I'm like, why am I so agreeable to everybody? So while you're talking about that, was there a time or a practice or some sort of play you did to work through that need to be so agreeable? Because it's so hard, like as a people pleaser myself, like trying to not be agreeable. And so I'm in the phase right now where I'm just noticing it, like where I'm agreeable to so many people. And so I know that there's this next step for me too. So is there a part of your story that you remember of that?
Yeah. So I'm sure you can tell just by the way, when I talk about different things, like I'll get amped up or I start speaking faster, my hands start flying or so I've always, it was in my nature to always just be knee jerk. Like I need to know real fast. I need to know now. Like this is like, you say this and I'm like, yes, no, or, and my first instinct is survive. Yes. And so no pun intended, but pause. So that's like now that has been one of the biggest tools for me is that I don't have to say yes or no right away. If someone asks something of me, and if it's something that I can say, can I let you know tomorrow? Let me just sit with it for a minute. And sometimes I don't have a day, but even if I need 30 seconds, a minute, like I check in with my body. That is my number one gauging tool is my nervous system. So I'd say really getting to be like best friends with your nervous system and feeling when you get a twitch, feeling and knowing, like even playing around, and I'll have my clients do this too. Sometimes we don't even know what the twitch means. I don't know if that's a yes or a no. So I will invite people to like think of the things that you know are a for sure yes. How does that feel in your body? How does like chocolate ice cream cone feel in your body? Like, oh, that feels like a major yes. And I can see, where do I feel it? Do I feel it in my stomach? Do I feel it in my chest? Like, where do I feel the things that I know are yeses? And where do I feel my no's? So that I'm familiar with what a yes feels like to me. And obviously it takes, time and practice, but it's giving yourself a moment to feel, to see what's there, to see, someone says like, hey, would you mind picking this up before you come to my house? Or would you mind doing this favor for me and picking so-and-so up at the airport or whatever it is, it's like, okay, you know what? My schedule's super tight today and I can't do it now. I could do it later on tonight, or I can pick it up for you tomorrow, or, like, it's really just like being honest with what works for us and what doesn't. But knowing what that even feels like in the first place for me.
Thank you. And I've also been working with or playing around with when people ask me a question, I don't always have to answer. I can answer with a question.
Absolutely. Get more information.
Yeah, I'm always like quick to be like, well, I have to give them the solid answer right away. And it's like, you know what? No, why don't I question
I
other,
know.
take my power back a little.
Right. I'll do that with text.
Mhm.
My nervous system was like so geeked out all the time, thinking like someone texted me, I'm in the middle of something. I'm literally in the middle of a breathwork session and I get a text. I'm like, well, their eyes are closed. I can answer it. People don't answer me right away. Why do I feel like I need to answer something? Like, it's like, oh my gosh, like just take a moment and be present. It's like that's also another thing, is like really being present. Like when someone asks something, it's like feeling your body, feeling your breath. How did that just react to you? Allowing yourself to like just be in the moment. Like, well, what happens if I say no to them? Are they not going to like me anymore? Maybe I'm not going to be invited to the birthday party if I say no to them, or whatever it is. Like going off on these, so many other pieces start coming up, and instead of just being with that thing right then, how does it feel? And then respond to it, not reacting to it like a knee-jerk reaction.
There's a difference between responding and reacting.
Yeah, totally. Totally. It's so much more empowering. And I don't even want to say empowering, because that doesn't have to be like that much of an energy to it, but it's so much clean is always the word I use. It just feels so much cleaner in my system to respond than to just react. Like I have this emotional reaction. And I'm Puerto Rican, so I'm just emotional, period. Like I just respond. I like that. And that's another thing too. We're all different. So we all have different levels of what our nervous systems can take. I feel, and I might be kidding myself, but I feel like I can take some fire. Like that's okay for me. Like I'm okay with that. But I just need to find my balance, so that to find where I calibrate into like neutral for myself. And that can be totally different than Josh's and totally different than yours, but just being honest, when I'm like, ooh, I'm feeling a little fiery now, I can feel my nervous system like, okay. I have a really good friend that like when she's in her calm, I have to check. Do you have Marco Polo or Marco? It's like, yeah. So you can like do 2x to listen to I always think that I by accident hit the 2x when she's speaking. I'm like, she really talking that fast? I can't even. And it's just, that's her right after a meditation, but for me, it's like, it's a lot. And then I'm a lot for someone else. So it's just finding your own balance.
Beautiful.
Mm-hmm.
I'd love to hear about your retreats, maybe a little background on some that you've done and then any that you have upcoming.
Yeah. So I actually booked a retreat and planned a retreat years ago, probably maybe 10 years ago. I had planned a retreat. I was so excited and planned all the things because I love planning. I think I should have been like a travel agent in another life too. I love planning travel, but one person signed up and I ended up canceling it. And I had a big story about how like, it's not for me. It would have been nice, but I'm not the kind of person that people would come to. And so I never even looked at it again. And then during COVID, I think it was early on in COVID, I actually went to a retreat, like maybe in like January or February of 21 or something around there. And it was the retreat itself. I had so much fun, met some amazing women, but the retreat itself was planned so poorly. Like we were supposed to have a chef and we ended up like ordering pizza out because they ran out of money to get food. It was just really poorly organized. And when I got done with that retreat, I'm like, okay, we all had the best time ever. And it was planned horribly. Like, surely I can plan a retreat. Like I can plan something that's more organized than this. And people are going to have fun no matter what, because what the retreat, like the beauty and the magic of a retreat is the community that's built within it. And that's what I really got there. I was like, it really doesn't, all the little details are just fun bonuses, but the community, that's really like the magic of it. So I came home and planned a retreat and sold it out with almost all the girls from that retreat ended up coming to my retreat and sold it out like in 24 hours. So then I was like, okay, I can do this. And so the first retreat, it was breath work. I did some breath work. It was before pause, but I was doing my first style that I learned. Breath work, yoga, and what I really like incorporating is feminine and masculine. So we always have like hiking, kind of adventure type situation where people are doing things that they wouldn't normally do at home. It's all women, and it's all women who don't realize how powerful they are, right? And so it's like giving them experiences that they think they cannot do, like rappelling. Half the women going, we just got back from one in Zion, and women are like, I can't do that. I'm like, you can do that. I'm like, you don't have to do it, but you can do it. And you're going to be more on your deathbed. You're going to be wishing you did it. And then they all do it. And then they're like, oh my gosh, what else can I do? So it started with the one, and then, and it's been like, I don't know, since then, maybe, I don't know, I do like maybe 2 to 4 a year. And then now it's grown into where I'm doing maybe 2, like this year I have 2, but then I'm working with other people, helping them organize their retreats. And then I should come and do breath work or teach some classes or just help them hold space, at their retreat. So I absolutely love the retreats for, again, mostly the community aspect, but also to give these women a space to come and have no role that they have to play. They don't have to be a wife, a mother, a worker, a business owner. They don't have to be anything. They can just show up as a girl, as just a person. And they get to see every single time. There has not been a retreat that this hasn't happened, where they come and they're all strangers and they just fall in love. And it's such a beautiful example of when you show up as yourself. And like right away, walls are down, and we're doing exercises so that the walls are down fast. That when they show up as themselves, not with the wall up and pretending to be all these other things, that they just fall in love with each other. And so they end up being closer with these people in a weekend or in a week than they are with people they've known most of their life, because they actually get to have people really see them, who they are, their vulnerabilities and their strengths and their stories and their playfulness and all of that. And I just love watching them fall in love. And then seeing them, they have all their group WhatsApp and seeing them messaging each other all the time and going on other vacations all the time, and where they came as strangers, now they're coming to my next retreat and sharing a room. And so I love the retreats. The retreats are a big part of it. I have an online, like a subscription or a membership where, we meet every week also, but, and they start meeting there, but then the in-person is just awesome.
It's so powerful. It's like healing the sister wound, because it's like, it's inevitable. No matter what, you get a group of women together, they could have so many differences, and maybe it takes a day or two, but eventually they are just instantly, like you said, in love with each other.
Yeah. And it is, it's such a natural thing for women or people, but, I'm a woman. So I'm going to say, like, having these circles, these women's circles, like, millennia, that used to be the norm, where there were these women's circles that they come together and they share and they laugh and they cry and they learn and they conjure and, they do all these things. And it was just totally normal. And now, we've not only gotten away from it, but it's almost the opposite, where now it's like competition and, and gossipy and chit-chatting. And I feel like it's starting to come back, and maybe it's just the circles I'm in, but I feel like, that community is coming back. It's so important. I mean, when I think of like the tribal systems of the past, it's like men had their circles and they know men's stuff and they talk about men's stuff and they do that. And then the women had theirs, and then they would come together and celebrate and have babies and, and do other things together. But it was so important for them to have their genders together too, for seeing themselves in each other.
Exactly. It's all that reflection.
Yeah.
Like in other people. Yeah, I go to one women's group and it's amazing. Like just circle of beautiful women, and we laugh, we cry. It's everything. When I invite other people to come, there's so much resistance. Some they're like so afraid of like, oh well, is it weird? Like what people think? And it's like as soon as they come, I remember when I was invited, I was like, all right, what am I going to? But I knew that I was gonna have fun. But there's still, I could feel that little bit of resistance in it. It's like, like just these last few generations of people kind of, I don't know, especially during COVID, just so much separation. I think it's so important to move past that resistance. And
it is, yeah. I think a big part of it is like being seen. Again, it's like if someone sees me, if I go to this place where I'm supposed to let myself be seen, what if they don't like me? What if I'm not accepted into the group? What if what if they don't let me in and I'm gonna die? Back to that. Yeah. So it is. I love the circles, and I love that so much. I think they're super powerful, and that's the thing. When you start letting yourself be seen, you see that we all have the same fears and the same, like so many of the same like joys and fears and concerns and heartbreaks and all that. And so it does feel scary. So my retreat, my next retreat, that's in it's in Temecula, it's right outside of San Diego. I'm doing something a little different, and I am actually stepping out into being a little more like in this, becoming more authentic in my, like in what my thing is. Like I am more on that like woo woo witchy side, and I hide that because I'm afraid how it's going to be received. And so my next retreat, I'm kind of like letting my freak flag fly, and doing different ceremonies, and we have like a cacao ceremony. It's a little more, again, stepping into this feminine, bringing more of this feminine into it, with more dancing and more movement. I can't even tell you how weirded out people get with dancing. Like every retreat, I have I call it Goddess Groove, and it's like a dancing meditation. Everybody, like 100% of the people are weirded out, like in the first couple songs, and they're like all stiff, like an 8th grade dance, they're like all awkward, and then by the end of it, they're like flowing and doing all these things, and it's so awesome to watch. But people are, I don't say, I notice women are so afraid to be in their body. There's so much shame around being sensual, and I mean, I would say that's probably women and men, but because I work with women, it's like, yeah, too sensual. Then people are like, what is she doing? Like, whore, It's like a weird shaming that we do to each other, but it's like so empowering. That's part of my morning practice, is I dance every morning to where I'm like laughing in the mirror, and I'll be like laughing at myself, almost embarrassed to myself that I'm dancing the way I'm dancing. But I will say, since I've started that practice, I have found, because it's in my nature to be more sensual, partly because of how I grew up and what that meant growing up. But now it's shifted from this power thing to this like, I don't know, like recognizing this flow in me. Like, I don't know how to explain it. It's like, instead of a power to get the guy, I'm going to be sensual. Now it's like oh my gosh, I just feel so grounded and so free. And it has nothing to do, like, I don't even, like, it has nothing to do with like, oh, if I do this, that guy's going to watch me. It's more like, oh my God, I just feel so free.
And you're permissioning other women to feel that way.
Right. And so that's where my work's going. So my retreats are stepping in, like I'm and I will see how it goes. I have my first one in March that's going to be this kind of vibe, but it is like more don't know what the word is, but like it's more of a invitation to have people just full on be in flow and be creative with the way they walk, with the way they eat, with the way they even like feel our bodies,
I think it will be successful because I think that is so needed. And I think women are yearning for that, even if they don't know it.
Yeah, even something as simple, because I grew up, and I think it's also an 80s thing, but 80s, it was all about the supermodel. It's like, you better like be as thin and as attractive and whatever. And especially with breath work, it really stepped into, for myself, as well as is asking other people to do it, is like, quit the sucking your stomach in thing. Like, it's like, I that was one of my things this year, like from New Year's, like not a resolution, but like a promise to myself. I'm like, I am not sucking my stomach in anymore. Like, okay, I have kids. I'm 53 years old and I have a little bit of a belly, and oh well. And just that alone, I'm like, how mean is that, to suck your stomach in?
I call that out
smaller, to try to be less,
I call that out to women every time someone comes into my class who's never breathed before. I'm like, okay, here we don't hold our stomachs in.
Yeah.
Like us, especially as women, we're always holding our stomachs in. So we breathe up here. Like, no more of that.
Yeah.
I always call that out.
Yeah.
And we have to just stop. Really, we have to release.
Yeah.
And this just dropped in. Have you seen Pamela Anderson lately? She's doing like no makeup. That's her thing. And like I love that.
Yeah, I love that too. And I love that more and more. I don't know if I don't have a TV, so I'm not sure, but I know that for a while Dove was doing like different ads where it's like women of all different sizes, and they're like in, what we call like granny panties or whatever. And I just love that. It's like like we're like, just allow us to be, just to be like, aging is a thing. That's been a big part of my healing as well, because growing up, a big message in my house was like thin, young, pretty, specifically. But one of the things my mom would say is like, you better stay young and pretty looking, or young looking and thin and pretty, because men will find someone else. Like, as you age, men will find someone else. And that has been like a mantra to me. And so that is kind of one of the even in being single now and being open to dating and stepping into that, I'm like, I am not I want all relationships in my life, to be made from a place of authenticity and pure love for myself. And that, that light that it creates in me just attracts the things that want that kind of light. So if I have to be something and make sure I look like this, and make sure that I don't gain weight, and make sure that I don't have a wrinkle, like, what is that? That is like that hurts my nervous system just thinking about it. And so if I was to be in a romantic relationship again and find a partner or whatever, then they will love every single ripple and bump and cellulite and all the things, like that will just be it's just part of my story and part of my journey. And I want love from, not to mention, I know women who don't fit the standard beauty, they're not in those parameters, and they're just stunning and attractive, and they shine such a bright light that they're like, people are like moths to a flame with them. And that's beautiful. I love that. And so that is like, whether you want to call it confidence, or whether you just want to call it like, I don't know, just knowing that like the kingdom of God is within us, and that's who we are. Like that's sexy, like that is a powerful brightness that is so attractive. And so I want to support, I want to support myself in remembering that, and I want to support others in remembering that.
It might be a cliche, but it's what matters on the inside.
Yeah, totally. Absolutely. And I've also, and maybe it's also because I have children and I am divorced, but I also don't have, I mean, that was such a focus for me, was to make sure I had a partner. And would I love someone to go to, go travel with, or go out to dinner with, or go on a hike with? Yeah, I mean, yeah, I would love that. But I also, like, that's like an icing on the cake kind of thing. I really, truly am just loving my life and the work and growing and sharing that and all the new relationships I have in my life. Like, I'm loving it so much that it's like, side note, if I could have a partner to share that with. And it's also, I mean, I will say the difficult part is it's made me so incredibly discerning with that. Because I mean, I get asked out occasionally and I'm like, I don't even want to entertain it, because it's like, I already know. Like, I already know. I can already feel like it's a no.
Mm-hmm.
So, and then my ego doesn't need the date just for a date,
Yeah, you totally tapped into that intuition.
Yeah, I mean, I'm working on it. I have my moments for sure, but yeah, it's so much louder than it used to be, and I'm so grateful, and I do not take that for granted.
Mhm.
Yeah,
That's the key there, intuition over ego.
yeah. And we're human. There's a quote. What is that quote? Oh, so I don't know if you know who Megan Watterson is. She wrote Mary Magdalene Revealed, which is an amazing book, by the way. But she talks about how Mary Magdalene had said that we're all truly human. And what true is, that what it was? Truly human, or true humans. And what a true human is that we're fully divine and we're fully human. We're not just a little bit divine and human, and we're not just divine and not human. So all the experiences, all the anger, the sadness, the joy, like all the things, like, we're meant to feel all this. We're meant to like, everything that you guys have gone through in your life is why you're doing this podcast. It's why we're all having this conversation, right? And so it's like, all like, let ourselves feel all the things and notice all the things. And my point with this was like, yeah, I'm totally tapped into my intuition most of the time, a lot of the time. And there's a lot of the time that I'm not, and I'm human. And there's times I might get pissed off, or times I make a choice that I'm like, I kind of knew I shouldn't have done that, but I did it anyway. And like, that's fine. It's like, not, we don't need to be perfect, or just because we are fully divine, it doesn't mean we're perfect, because we're still fully human as well. And that's like the beauty and the fun of all of it,
Mm-hmm.
For me, I think it's fun. I think it's fun. Even I have to remind myself of that sometimes when I'm feeling something that doesn't feel so good, but I'm like, this is just part of being human. Like, I love this experience, and it's a blink of time.
Mm-hmm. It's needing those reminders too that keep us human. I'm constantly needing to remind myself all of that.
Well, thank you, Shannon, for sharing your journey with us. It's been such an amazing just gift.
Thank you. Thank you for letting me chat for the last hour and a half.
Well, we'd love to have you share where people can find you.
Yeah. So, well, I have my website, which is Shannon Bryson breathwork.com. And I am also on Instagram. It's wildbreath.shannonbryson. And then on Facebook, it's Wild Breath by Shannon Bryson. Yeah. So, and I am, I have I have the retreats and my monthly membership, the membership. That's where I do most of my work with the gals on there. Other than that, I do like little pop-up things that people, I'll work at different studios. They'll bring me in for breath work in the San Diego area, but yeah, mostly online.
So cool. And then we like to finish giving the opportunity for our guests to, if you had the opportunity to share a message with the world, what would that be for you right now?
Mm. I mean, it's kind of what I was talking about the whole time. It's like, just listen to your nervous system. Just pause and listen to the quiet voice. Because like we know our answers. We know our answers. So I'm just saying, like, not having those knee-jerk reactions, just taking the time to listen and to feel into what your truth is.
Thank you for listening to the Deeper Awareness podcast, where the journey of self-discovery and inner growth continues to unfold. We hope this episode has ignited a spark within you and inspired you to embrace a more conscious and authentic existence by looking within. If you enjoyed today's conversation, be sure to subscribe and stay tuned for upcoming episodes, where we'll continue to explore the transformative power of breathwork and emotional healing. Continue the conversation and stay connected with us on Instagram. Follow at Deeper Awareness Podcast to receive daily inspiration, valuable tips, and updates on our latest episodes and offerings. We'd love to hear your thoughts and insights from today's show, so feel free to share them in the comments below or tag us in your posts. Your engagement and feedback mean the world to us as we strive to continue to create content that resonates and empowers our incredible community. Together, we can continue exploring the depths of consciousness, fostering genuine connections, and supporting each other on our transformative journeys. This episode is brought to you by You Belong Breathwork, your destination for transformative healing and self-discovery. At You Belong Breathwork, we believe in the power of breath to unlock the deepest parts of ourselves, leading to profound insights and a greater sense of connection and belonging. Whether you're seeking emotional healing, a deeper connection with yourself, or a path to authenticity, our breathwork sessions, retreats, and coaching programs are designed to guide you on this transformative journey. Our experienced facilitators are here to hold space for you as you explore the depths of your consciousness and discover the infinite potential within. Visit youbelongbreathwork.com to explore our offerings and download a free guided breathwork session. Thank you for being a part of our Deeper Awareness community. Stay connected, stay curious, and may you embrace your true essence with love and compassion. Goodbye for now, and see you in the next episode.